Greetings from the far side of the galaxy. I'm Fuuri, your host with the most, here to talk to you about titties and tigers. I didn't expect to be making another Housamo Heroes video so soon, but y'all really liked that Housamo video. In fact, I didn't expect a video about a niche gay furry gacha game to do so well. Like seriously, aside from my smash hits, that video has done the best of anything I've ever made. I had just lost a ton of momentum thanks to YouTube deleting my channel from false copyright claims. The fact that you guys helped me bounce back from that means so much to me. For that, I tip my hat. Future me, give me a hat. Thank you. For that, I tip my brand new hat to you. Now if you don't mind liking and or subscribing, let me tell you about today's Housamo hero. He's the high-flying haymaker, Mr. Speedo Gonzalez himself, Hombre Tigre. Here's your spoiler warnings for chapters 9 and 10, and now let's get started on Hombre Tigre. He's a transient from the world of El Dorado and a member of the Warmongers Guild, specifically Tezcatlipoca's faction at Penitencia Academy. While we unfortunately don't know his rule or role, we do know that his sacred artifact is that rubber-like substance. It makes up his pants and he uses it to push and pull his opponents, controlling the flow of the fight, and to do other things if you're into latex. More importantly, since his body is a closed system where the app can work, he uses his sacred artifact to replace the heart he willingly gave away. This means that every time he enters battle, or just as he's existing day to day, if his powers were to ever fail, Hombre Tigre would meet a swift end. Now that I've introduced the character, let's look at the inspiration behind Hombre Tigre. He's modeled after a wrestler, specifically a South American luchador, which is where he gets his lucha libre from. Lucha libre originally referred to South American freestyle wrestling as a martial sport. However, now it is usually used to refer to the more showy professional wrestling. Strap in your butts because the next thing I'm gonna tell you may come as a shocker, but the next thing to influence Hombre Tigre's character is the myth of the Hombre Tigre. Because this can get very confusing very quickly, I'll use Hombre Tigre for the myth and just Hombre for the transient. As the name suggests, the Hombre Tigre is a man-tiger, or well, man-puma to be totally accurate. From what I can tell, the story of a man-tiger is actually relatively common in South America. Think of it as their version of the werewolf. One version from Bolivia involves a ritualistic practice of rubbing a plant on yourself and somersaulting 3 times to become one. It comes with a classic tale of a man-tiger eating livestock until one of the villagers finds out it's him and runs him out of town. Another version is the Runa Uturuncu from Argentina. Unlike in Bolivia, this one is said to be a man that has gained the transformation, not through a plant and gymnastics, but a deal with the devil. Furthermore, Hombre does appear to have influences more expected of Tezcatlipoca's right-hand man. That being, oh fuck, do I really have to try and pronounce this? Tepeyalatl. Damn it, Google, help me.
Tepieto.
Tepieto, huh? Well, he's the Aztec jaguar god. From the sparse mythology I can find, Tepieto was usually Tezcatlipoca's right-hand man, as Hombre is in-game. Often, he'd be worn by Tezcatlipoca as a disguise, notably to trick Quetzalcoatl to end the Toltec Golden Age. Kinda like the jacket fruit from One Piece, but a bit more Mayan and a lot more furry. Immediately, we can see some similarities between Hombre in-game and the myths he's based on. The inspiration between the Runa Uturuncu, Hombre Tigre, and Tepieto is symbolic of Hombre Tigre being the vessel for Tezcatlipoca in-game. We literally see Tezcatlipoca possess and fight using Hombre's body when he fights the player in Kamata. Hombre is just a disguise, like the Hombre Tigre transformation of the true form. And considering Tezcatlipoca's role in ending the Mayan Golden Age, you could say that Hombre did make a deal with an analog to the Western Devil. We further see the Aztec influences in Hombre's backstory, which is unsurprising since he's from the world of El Dorado. The system of El Dorado promotes immortality through sacrifice. Towards this end, Hombre Tigre gave his very heart to Tezcatlipoca. This is reminiscent of the actual Aztec sacrifice, which had a war prisoner's heart removed in honor of Tezcatlipoca. In-game, rather than, dying, it replaced his heart with darkness to become Tezcatlipoca's vessel. And that's his entire backstory before arriving in Tokyo. Quite the long one, isn't it? Once he got to Tokyo, he continued his service under Tezcatlipoca as a member of the Warmongers. He's the first Warmonger we're introduced to, or well, he would have been if Kirito wasn't technically the first. He launches an attack on the Kamata crafters while the player is there and serves to introduce Penitencia and the Warmongers to the story. He gets across the Warmonger's very militaristic organization in a goofy way while also adding a sense of mystique when it gets serious. Having him release Tezcatlipoca's shadow was a great choice to keep all the world reps and the true guilds feeling overpowered and opposing now that they've taken center stage. We next see him in chapter 10 when he introduces us directly to Tezcatlipoca. It's a great scene that subverts everything about Penitentia, with Tezcatlipoca being himself. The fact that Tezcatlipoca and Hombre have very similar personalities is related to Hombre's reason for following him. In Tezcatlipoca's smoking world, we learn of Hombre's desire to fill an empty loneliness inside him. He sympathized with Tezcatlipoca after both of his brothers fled El Dorado, leaving Tezcatlipoca completely on his own. Despite the player beating him in the smoking world, Hombre has no regrets. He just feels sad that Tezcatlipoca can only express himself through war. Finally, after witnessing Tezcatlipoca fade away, he takes it upon himself to show to the invaders what war means to a warmonger. Well, not the invaders the guild, but the people invading Penitentia, the rulemakers. Hombre doesn't appear in the main quest after this, leaving his ultimate fate unknown. However, he does appear in the summer event, but I'll talk more about that when I get there. Which will be soon, since we're now on the unit part of this video, and spoiler alert, they all suck. Clearly, whoever designs the units at Life Wonders hates them as much as whoever designs the events. His 3-star unit sucks like all other 3-stars, but it is the cheapest in a whole row of suckage, so D+. Hombre's 3-star, for better or worse, is very similar to his 4-star. Both of them do extra damage to berserker enemies while draining a decent chunk of CP, which isn't worth it. They attract enemies in bow range and have increased vertical movement, which is also not worth it. His 4-star differs with the 3rd skill, which has a garbo chance of inflicting oppression to the entire board. It also gives him a 100% chance to attract allies on the board to Hombre after he moves. And no, I didn't misspeak, it has a 100% chance to attract specifically your allies. I suppose this would be useful with a bunch of slash and long slash allies or against an enemy that moves your team. Ironically, this makes Hombre great at fighting Hombre, so if you're on chapter 9, go nuts. I know I'm hamming it up for YouTube a bit, but there are some fundamental problems here. He's not good enough to justify a lopsided slash team, nor are enemies that move your team common enough for him to be that useful. He's not bad, but his 3rd skill is so weird it makes him too hard to use with too little payoff. Do I even need to talk about his 4-star's final skill? Low proc evasion and a decent chance of adding CP to allies isn't worth getting your formation jumbled. Just use his 3-star. Its skill also sucks, but it's not going to actively harm your team. The only good thing I can say about these units is that both are wood type, which ties into the fact that natural rubber comes from trees. Next up is his summer variant, which is better, but better in the sense that he's not going to screw over your team, just himself. The story of the summer event is that Hombre Tigre and some others are brought into Otahime's Dragon Palace in a virtual world. As violence is forbidden there, they take action by disguising it as a dance, which is why Hombre's doing capoeira. And this really makes sense considering capoeira is a real martial art Brazilian slaves practice under their owner's eye as a dance. And considering Tezcatlipoca was a divine patron of slaves, it makes sense that Hombre would know capoeira. As a unit, this Hombre is also not that good. Better than the regular units to be sure, but I'd only get him for collection. His first skill lets him inflict taunt to attract enemy aggro and literally attract enemies towards himself. But he also has the lowest HP of the taunt units and no way to heal himself. Thanks to his 4th skill, this isn't a complete deal breaker, but it's definitely not a deal maker. More of a deal... why? Next is the worst charm skill I've ever seen, alongside Taunt Strengthening, which buffs his proc by 30%. Notably, his next set has 2 skills with 70% proc, meaning they only gain 100% proc for 2 turns after phase start due to Taunt Strengthening. I know I harp on consistency a lot, but most of what you do in Housamo is grind event quest. Getting a consistent grind with as few variables as possible matters. You could skill seed him to buff up his guts proc, and I'll admit, it makes him pretty good. But its unseated cap is 50%, and need I mention consistency again? What teams do I recommend? None. How do I suggest you play him? Don't. I'm kidding, mostly, but 4-star Hombre works best with a bunch of other frontline bruisers and maybe as a good counter to anyone that jumbles your team. Limited Hombre can work great as a single frontline until he dies when Guts fails to proc 50% of the time. I'd probably take his ult, however, how much investment he needs to break past OK does not make me happy. Moving on, his relationship chart is rather lopsided. Torresmas likes Hombre because they're both professional wrestlers. Hombre himself likes Varga because he's one of the few wrestlers who can match him. No one dislikes Hombre aside from Life Wonders, but Hombre dislikes quite a few people. He dislikes Yamasashi Hiko because the Jaguar man obsessed with sacrifice looks down on those who are too afraid to lose their possessions. For the same reason, he dislikes Ark as well. He also dislikes Jose because those who live dangerously close to the edge mirror him in a way he doesn't like. Hombre doesn't have any loading screens, but I do have some fun facts gathered for y'all today. The first being that he's actually a Jaguar canonically, not a Tiger. He even calls himself one in the summer event. Secondly, Hombre Tigre is actually kind of shy, not that he'd let Tezcatlipoca know. And finally, the reason he was left out of 2021's Tiger event, aside from being a Jaguar, is because Tezcatlipoca crashed into the school as he was driving him there. In conclusion, Life Wonders needs to do more with Hombre, if not to get him a new unit, then just because he's a really cool character. He's loud and boisterous on purpose to hide a rather caring and sympathetic side. His dedication to Tezcatlipoca isn't at all dissimilar from the summoner's dedication to the player. Now that Tezcatlipoca has faded away, basically leaving Hombre out of a job, I wonder what he's up to now. I suppose only time and Life Wonders can tell. Thank you all for watching, it genuinely means so much to a small channel like myself. Do be sure to leave any thoughts you have in the comments. I try to respond to most of them as best I can. And before we go, do be sure to like and subscribe because holy crap, that makes me happy. As always, this is your host Fuuri signing out.